Hi, good morning, it's Jesse. I'm back again, and I'm still on Judges 16, my little Delilah series I got going. And the reason I'm talking so much about Delilah is because I want you to see how the enemy operates. In my last video, I talked about Psalm 62, and there's a spot in there where David says, with their lips they bless me, but in their hearts they curse me. And Delilah really shows us how this thing goes. And if you have eyes to see, you'll see what she's doing, you know? But sometimes by the time God gives you eyes to see this, it's too late. And so most people, when they preach on Delilah, they talk about how they have no problem with Delilah because, it's obvious what she was doing. But it's only obvious to them because they're reading the story. But if you actually knew the intimate details and how the enemy works, when he can't beat you by strength, his next move is to get you through love, you know. And I think, Song of Solomon, it tells you to, on this knees. Sorry. But Song of Solomon, it tells us that to be careful about turning that key of love. It cautions us on turning that key of love. And if we understand this correctly, then we can save ourselves a lot of heartache, because there are some people in this world who will get you to love them and then will use that love to entrap you, like Delilah did here. Samson was so in love with her, and yet she set him up to be taken down. She set him up to have his eyes put out and have him thrown in prison as a slave to entertain his tormentors. And if he had not loved her, she would not have had that power over him. But she played a real manipulative game. She she was a snake, you know, and you have to understand that the way that she worked, it wasn't so easy to see for Samson. He knew well enough not to tell her the truth, because she asked him many times, tell me the secret of your great strength. And then, she came back and she twisted things on him, like, oh, you lied to me, you made a fool of me, how could you? If you loved me, you wouldn't do that. If you loved me, you would tell me. And this is how the snake operates. They use guilt on you. They throw the offense back on you, so that though you were right not to tell her, they make you feel guilty and try to get it out of you. It's a manipulation, and it's completely wrong. But even more than that, even more than that little manipulative game right there, she did something else. Because as she had the men in the room coming to tie down Samson and to do whatever Samson had told her, whatever lie he had told her, to do to him whatever he said would take away his strength. And over again. And she would caution Samson. She would wake him from his sleep. Samson, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And Samson would get up and break the ropes or whatever. But that little game right there, it's she was setting him up, but she was also playing like she was his friend on his side. Like David said, with their lips they bless me, but in their hearts they curse me. So yeah, it looked like she was on his side, and I'm sure she used that. No, Samson, I wouldn't do that to you. I woke you up. I warned you, Samson. I wouldn't do that to you. You don't see that game. It's not portrayed here so much. And so those preachers who say there was nothing wrong with Delilah, she was just doing her thing. Yeah, she was doing her thing. She was being a snake. She was acting like she was his friend, like like she was on his side, like she was helping him, Samson, I woke you up. I wouldn't do that to you. Just tell me. If you love me, tell me. So you gotta recognize the game there, because the hardest enemy to face, the one who will pierce your heart, and oh, which gospel is it? Where the angel tells Mary that a sword will pierce through his heart, through Jesus's heart, and through Mary's as well, you know. And this is the game that they run, this is the place where you have to get to when you're on your journey with God, because He's always, everything He does is training you up, he trains you up with battles. David fought the lion and the bear and enslaved Goliath and won so many wars, great and mighty warrior. He trains you up so that the next task is always more challenging, but you're always going through it, You're always going through it, and you're building your faith in God. David knew God well, but when you get to this point where they break your heart, you know, where they make you want to give up on life, where you just don't even know how to get the victory and settle things, and you just want it to end. And like Samson, he prayed to God for his strength to return and give him the strength to take down his enemies, and he killed them all, but then he killed himself too. And then what good service is that to God? That is no good service. um, David tells us that God doesn't delight in sacrifice like that. He doesn't delight in offering like that. What God wants you to do is, in the words of Dr. Cynthia James, He wants you to live through it. He wants you to go through it. He wants you to know that even if your heart is broken, that broken heart, that contrite spirit, He's not going to despise you. He's still going to love you. And if you go through it, if you just endure, if you just keep on going and keep trusting in Him, when you learn to lay your swords down, then, like with Job, God will show up, and He will deal with those who came against you, and you'll actually be put in a position where their judgment comes before you, and you have a choice that you can cut them down, or you can say, you know what, God, I'm going to choose to forgive and move on, because I don't want anything hindering me from being in your purpose and in your will. I don't need no blood on my hands. I just want to walk with you and be with you, and that's one thing that Job did. He pleaded for mercy for his enemies, for those people who had pretended to be his friend, even though they were just coming in to get him to convict himself, So to understand that this is that last battle that you're going to fight before you come into the kingdom of heaven, before you come in to your resting place, where your latter days are much greater than anything you had before, where anything that the enemy stole from you, God's giving you double for your trouble. He's multiplying it times 7. He's multiplying it times 100. There is some kind of multiplication going on there. And God is going to reward you according to how you hold yourself, And when I say how you hold yourself, what are you asking God for? When you're in this battle where you're having your heart broken, where everything's taken away from you, where you're losing your strength and your sight and you're locked up and locked in, what are you praying to God for? What are you asking Him for? Because He's going to give it to you. You understand? And yeah, you might want to see your enemies taken down, but truly, nobody really wants their enemies taken down. Nobody wants that guilt on their hands. Nobody really wants that blood in their hands. It may seem satisfying for a minute, but in the long run, you don't really want to harm anybody else, because you're a child of God. And God has a higher standard for you, and you got to follow that higher standard and press past those hurt feelings of, these people need to pay for what they've done. You need to press past that, because that's really not going to serve you, and in fact, it's really going to hurt you later on down the road. So you got to press past it, and you got to say, God, all I want is you. you know, just come down, you know, come down and touch us, be with us, so that, you know, no one will have to go through this ever again, God. You know, um, God told Job, don't you trust in my judgment, you know. He told them, you gotta trust in my judgment is just, you know. Don't hold me back, but if you want to hold me back, you can hold me back, and I'll still reward you abundantly, you know. So you gotta understand that it's this point where you have to come to say, God, just come, but do be merciful, you know. I don't want to hold you back. I don't want to get in your way. I don't want anybody else to suffer the way that I've suffered. You know, you just gotta keep on pressing into him and pressing into his heart, because you know the Bible tells us his will. And his will is that not one of us be destroyed, you know, but that we all return to him. You know, he says, return to him and he'll return to us. So we're told to stand in the gap for our enemies, you know, to bless those that curse us, you know. So as we're standing in the gap, in the judgment place, you know, we hear their judgment, and it's for us to intercede for them, not just to say mercy, but to say, God, give them an encounter, because what they really need is a touch from you. Because if they had a touch from you, they wouldn't be the way they are, you know. And you got to use it in this way. And you can't let your broken heart get in the way of the will of God, you know, because he really wants his children to return to him. You know, he really wants to return to us. He loves us dearly and he wants us back, you know. And so this is the point where we have to start saying, instead of calling for the judgment for our enemies, or even calling for the mercy of our enemies, but rather to just use it to say, all right, God, give them an encounter. Touch them, change them, pour your spirit out on them, create in them a clean heart, you know, because they can't ask for it for themselves. And since God's putting their judgment before you, he's putting their life in your hands. And if you're getting to decide their future, then what greater future could there be than a life with God, a life knowing God, a life being led by God? Because I tell you, you know, these people, they operate on power, but it's a false power. It's gained by the magnitudes and the multitudes, you know. It's a fleeting power where the assets are spent and there is no more, and then we fall down and die, you know. It's false, but when you have God, you're well, you know, everything flows, provision flows, wisdom flows, you know, power flows abundantly, you know. And so you want your enemies to let go of what they had, because what they had is what really cut you, right? So you want them to get like renewed, you know, because sometimes what we need is a flush. You understand what I'm saying? Sometimes there's so much stuff in us that we can't let go. We don't even know how to receive anymore because we're just so locked up in misery. And that's why these people do it, you know? They can't find their way to God. They can't hear their way to God. And so they have to steal everything, you know? They paid old Delilah 1,100 shekels of silver apiece, you know? So you have to understand, you know, they need a flush, and as long as you're standing in the gap for them, then you have to help them to be flushed out. Send your spirit, God. Create in them a clean heart. You know, renew their spirit. You know, bring them back into your presence, because all these things, they fall away in his presence. All this bitterness, you know, God speaks tenderly to you, and in just the ways that you need to hear to be able to let go of everything, you know. And you don't get to come into this place until you've had your heart pierced, you know. But perhaps once you have your heart pierced, you can stand in the gap and maybe make it so not everybody has to have their heart pierced to have this kind of encounter with him, but just beg God to give them what he gave you. You know what I'm saying? I hope that I made sense here. My timer is about 14 minutes and 36 seconds, so I have 20 seconds to finish up. Yeah, I'm empty now. Um, I'll do it again. Have a good day.